DreamMachine. My name is Arun.
And my name is Patricia.
Patricia, are you ready to go fast today?
Yes, I'm ready to go. It's turbo time. Wrong movie.
It definitely is turbo time, so let's get straight into it. So Turbo is the 27th feature film by DreamWorks Animation. It premiered on July 17th of 2013. The film was met with generally positive reviews and grossed over $282 million worldwide against its $127 million budget. Now, the reputation that this movie has around at least around my sphere, is not necessarily a good one. And some people were actually warning me about this film before I went into it. But surprisingly, I actually felt, I set my standards really low for this film. But surprisingly, this ended up being kind of likable.
It was actually not as horrible as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be like really annoying, like Cars would be, like being incredibly cocky. But I mean, to be fair, it's very similar to Cars, in which it's a pretty standard story that has an underdog character and he wants to be the best at something. I get a lot of Ratatouille vibes. I get a lot of Fast and Furious vibes. I get a lot of Bug's Life vibes. There's a lot of like Pixar inspired vibes into this movie. Yeah. And to be quite honest, it wasn't horrible. I mean, I would expect it to be like, I mean, it does have like the ingredients for like a pretty mediocre and forgettable and kind of infuriating film for critics, in terms of, it has a predictable story with cliched and stereotypical characters, and the story is not that off the curve, going into a little bit of a pun there, but yeah, for some reason, I just found it to be, I found it to be okay. I didn't find it to be as horrible as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Funnily enough, this film is actually distributed by 20th Century Fox, and we all know who they're owned by now. So
yes, they are. So I mean, it's official that I know that DreamWorks has now switched over with distributing their stuff with Universal now. We'll get to that mess when we get there. But yeah, I guess in a kind of weird way, it's part of the Disney lineup now.
Okay,
sort of.
Welcome to Pix Mix. My name is Arun.
And my name is Patricia. Hi, we're going to be taking a look at the spiritual successor to Cars. Here's Turbo. Enjoy. With a little bit of Ratatouille in it because, yeah, I know.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I do see a lot of similarities with Cars and Ratatouille in this. I feel like Theo is very similar to Remy, and he kind of looks up to this race car guy the very similar way to how Remy looked up to the chef on the TV, and he kind of like has them as his idol, and they, you have a group of snails, which is very similar to the group of rats, and they're, scrounging around getting food, and then they get then he gets separated, but this time he has his brother along. We'll get to that in a minute, and then he meets up with a bunch of like colorful characters, which are mostly humans, and they have their own personalities, and they're taken away from what they're usually accustomed to, like it's kind of like the opposite in that sense, in which like they were living in like this old lady's house, and then they were living in the sewers, but now with Remy living in the restaurant, which is like really pristine and clean and fancy, but it's the other way around, in which like it's this like simple garden full of tomatoes, and now they're kind of like in this like rundown plaza. So it's kind of like a bit of a reverse to that. I definitely do get that Ratatouille vibes, and then the Cars vibe, in which it starts literally at a racetrack and cars are racing around. So it's definitely like in the beginning of the first Cars movie, in which Lightning McQueen is racing around a whole bunch of cars. So Yes, I can definitely see where they're getting their influences from. I take it that because Cars 2 was released a few years prior, and I think that the Cars legacy was like booming at that point. I remember that we talked about this in Pix Mix that we saw a lot more of the toys and the shorts were coming out, and 2013 was still when Pixar was kind of like in its doldrums point, but and then this is when Disney was at its peak, and I guess that DreamWorks, with them and Pixar being like main competition around the 2000s, I don't know, it's like I don't know, it's like they had the idea of doing like a Cars, a similar movie to Cars, but then they kind of released it a little too late.
Yeah, but funny enough, like we spent more time referencing Ratatouille than we actually have referencing Cars, which is
Yeah, I thought that this was going to be very similar to Cars because if you ever seen the trailers, they focus a lot on the racing, so much on the racing. You have Turbo, well, his real name is Theo, but Turbo is just constantly dreaming about wanting to race, and he gets into the Indy 500, and he's surrounded by snails who are also race enthusiasts. So it definitely feels like Cars when you watch the trailers, but then when you watch the movie, it feels a lot like Ratatouille.
Yeah, but mind you, like at least in this world, like the snails are like somewhat, they are like of the snail, they are snails in this rather than just kind of like giant oversized cars in this, and
that
like
is
when
true.
there's
So,
and the human race
that
hasn't as far as in the Pixar timeline, the human race hasn't died out yet. So
yeah, right.
yeah.
A lot of people seem to, bring up the Pixar theory that Cars like comes out like right after Wall-E, in which like they're like repopulating, and then it's slowly but surely like the human race is coming back, and then for some reason Cars are there, or maybe it's like an alternative universe. I have no idea. I have no idea how it works in DreamWorks. I mean, we're still debating about whether it takes place in the same universe. We still have no idea just yet. We kind of like feel it's like more or less self-contained, but. Yeah, so let's get to the plot of this. So, yeah, it basically begins with, just like in Cars, with a race. But this time, instead of actually, it's an actual race, Theo is watching it on TV, and then he sees this racer who's apparently like this 5-time Indy 500 winning champion, and he talks about like never give up on your dreams and believe in yourself and that kind of stuff. Very similar to the chef with Ratatouille.
He basically to start off with in the first and second act, he's basically Augusto. Basically.
Yes, he is Augusto. Exactly. He is the one who's on the TV that the main character is seeing from afar, and he's saying a whole bunch of spiritual bits of advice about never give up on your dreams, always believe in yourself, you can do it, all that kind of stuff. So yes, the 2/3 of the movie, he is Augusto, and Theo is essentially our Remy, in which he believes that he can be a race champion, but the problem is that he is a snail, and as we all know from snails, they are the slowest creatures on Earth. I think they are the slowest.
In regards
I think
to
sloths.
Yeah, and one thing about the Gayne character, which I don't particularly like, is that I was hoping maybe this might actually be a movie without a main villain, and like it's only just about basically this underdog story. Like there's the only kind of like the villainous, I guess you could say, is basically just all the discrimination against him, and I was hoping that was all it was going to be. I didn't think we needed Gayne as a villain in this.
No, I didn't either. I thought that he would have been just a spirit, a motivational guy that when he sees Theo for the first time, he's like, this snail, even though he's small, I believe he can do it. And then like the third act, he's revealed to be the villain. Why? Because underdogs are always meant to be last. Yeah. And the champions are meant to rise. It's like, come on, really? Yeah. It's like, if you are going to be the villain of the movie, couldn't you have come up with a better idea? Like, I don't want you to ruin my reputation as a race car driver, or, I'm not going to lose to a snail, something like that. But no, it's
I think that was kind of like that was wrapped up into it. But I kind of wanted to be, instead of like being, I wanted to kind of be like a mix between Gusto and Colette. Like he's not himself kind of like not entirely on board of buying the idea that a snail can beat him, but at the same time he's not gonna stop him from doing what he wants to do, because he knows from his background that he comes from that background, And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
like
exactly.
I would have liked to like if they written him to be kind of like, oh well, in that scene when he like when they're in the garage and like, he says, oh yeah, look at all these beautiful trophies. Like it took me a long time to work my way up here, and also there was a lot of danger as well. And like maybe like he kind of like not like talk him out of it, but kind of like be his warning, like not just to be his spirit guide, basically say, look, well this is what you're walking into, and I've had my sense of danger and things like that, but and so kind of like not talk him out of it, but kind of give him a sense of realism, because at that point like there was a lot of there's a lot of unbelievability, and it would have been nice if like his spirit guide would have like brought him back down to earth a little bit, and then gave himself like maybe some little bit of self doubt. And maybe there might have been kind of like a tweak of like Gayne just wanting to basically just get one up over him because he wants to win the race, maybe. And like
Sure,
they're
sure, I
competitive
can
edge.
see that.
Not make him like I think it was, if you were gonna make him a villain, make him a complex one. Like not a villain as in such that he oh I'm the bad guy and I'm against Theo and Turbo and things like that. Be kind of like he's like hey, I support everything that you're doing, but this is what's happening right now, and this is what you're going to be up against, and I guarantee you it's going to be massively difficult. And he can say and he's saying that not just because it's true, but because there's also kind of like a sense of wanted to kind of like there's that competitive edge with him in it as well, which he has rightfully so because he's a competitor in a race.
Yeah, yeah. But to be fair, pretty much every character in this movie are not very complex.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that they decided not to think of that. I think that they decided to think more along the lines of the message more than the story or the characters, about believing in yourself and overcoming obstacles.
Besides Theo and besides Gayne and besides maybe Chet, do you remember any of the other characters' names?
Pretty much no. I just remember their stereotypes. It's like, oh, we have this really fat snail. Oh, we have the gangsta snail who's played by Snoop Dogg. We have Gil. What was it like? Yeah, it's Gil, the tough snail who's apparently more experienced, and then we have the crazy one who just leaves skid marks. That's his name, skid mark. And then we have the sassy female snail, and then we have everybody else from the plaza. So we have two of the same characters in this movie. We have the optimistic guy and the brother who is more down to earth and realistic. Yeah. So we basically have the snail version and the human version.
You've forgotten one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I'm surprised you haven't picked up on him. It's the guy who the person who plays Whiplash is Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh yeah, that's right. I guess that is true. Yeah, you're right. Whiplash is Samuel L. Jackson.
Well, I have to say, how painfully average does a movie have to be when Samuel L. Jackson doesn't even get noted as Samuel L. Jackson in this film?
I mean, I kind of hear it, but I don't really remember too much of the characters. That's how forgettable it is.
I think his skit in the Star Wars prequels, I think, was probably more memorable than his time in Turbo.
At least I remember how he dies.
Yeah, but So I mean, obviously you have Snoop Dogg and you have Samuel L. Jackson, so they try and like wench in like this celebrities, and Ryan Reynolds, I admit, is Theo. And
okay, to be fair, I can kind of see that kind of portrayal. I mean, nowadays everybody knows Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool and him being like all sarcastic and stuff, but him playing as like this like determined underdog, I kind of like his performance.
I like his performance as well, and I think Ryan Reynolds didn't foot wrong. I think in being the protagonist of this film, it's just unfortunately the I guess kind of the story writing and I guess the characters he has to work with, I guess really are up against him a little bit.
Yeah, and you know what? I have a question about this brother. I'm the snail brother. I forget what his name is, but I'm
Chet.
just,
Chet.
Chet. Okay, Chet. Okay, so Chet, he's basically throughout this entire movie trying to defend him, and because he's causing a whole bunch of problems with the other snails, very similar to Flick from A Bug's Life, in which, Flick is inventing a whole bunch of new things, and he's causing problems with the ant colony. And you have somebody who's trying to, nobody's defending him, and he's basically like on his own. The only one who cares about him is Dot, and so. We have Chet, who's constantly defending Theo to all of his other snail friends, saying, oh, don't worry, he's going to get out of this phase of wanting to be fast and all of that. And so they're basically gathering tomatoes, and they're weeding out the overripe tomatoes, and around lunchtime they eat the tomatoes. So basically, instead of like eating the garden like a normal snail would. They're actually just cleaning it up, which is actually pretty nice. So basically, something like you would see in A Bug's Life, in which they're, gathering food and such. So, throughout the movie, the first act at least, we're at this suburban neighborhood in this nice garden where the snails are just so sick and tired of Theo's determination of achieving his dream of being a racer, because he's a snail and he's just causing nothing but trouble.
And unfortunately, this is a story that we've heard too many times before.
Way too many times.
Way too many times. And on top of that as well, like, I mean, why were they? I mean, I get they're probably like, gathering tomatoes for food and things like that. But
they are gathering the tomatoes for food. They're not helping the people because they avoid them. So you have this like James Dean, race, tricycle riding kid who likes to crush things. He kind of reminds me of Sid from Toy Story and Dean from Rugrats, where he's like riding the tricycle. He has the glasses on and the slicked back hair, and that's all he does. He's just like, he looks for things and he wants to crush them with his tricycle wheel.
Yeah, I don't realize that tomato garden doesn't make a lot of sense, because I get it's an animated film, but the amount of tomatoes that they're gathering out of this patch, and the fact they're doing it like day after day after day, like you probably imagine that they would eventually run out of tomatoes, wouldn't you? Or eventually,
they're snails, so I take it that they're probably like doing like, I don't know, like 1 or 2 tomatoes a day, because they seem to only do it like for, I don't know, how long can snails like work until they get like overtired?
I'm not a biologist,
it looks like they can only work for maybe like, I don't know, a few hours, because it looks like, after they're leaving for their, for home, it still looks like it's daytime.
Yeah, so it's just, for me, that bit made not much sense. I mean, to be honest, and this is what kind of pulls into like the averageness of what this film is like, because it's just the story of like Theo going up to be the underdog to being the overachiever, and then you got the base of all the movie of it as well, and on top of that as well, they don't make the world all that much interesting. Like,
not really. No. You only have just a handful of set pieces. You have the home, you have the plaza, and you have the Indy 500 racetrack. That's pretty much it. It's pretty limited. And this is supposed to be, it starts off in the I think it's the San Fernando Valley of Los Angeles, and then it goes all the way up into Indianapolis for the Indy 500. I would think that maybe they would, take more advantage of the setting, kind of like how Ratatouille took the advantage of France, in which, you started off in the countryside and then you go over to Paris and you get to see like the view of Paris. You feel like you're there. But here, I mean, I can kind of feel the Los Angeles vibes a little bit, especially when they go over to the plaza, because, as somebody who has family who lives in Los Angeles and who sees what the stores and the plazas look like, and the racing of cars, especially when we get that Fast and Furious scene where the 2 cars are racing and that's how Theo gets his powers, I kind of feel that vibe, but it's like the bare bones of set pieces for where the story takes place.
Yeah. How did you feel about the way Theo got his powers? The fact that he's drinking like nitrogen or something like that, and he's
nitrous oxide or something that's supposed to help make the car go fast. And apparently it kind of looks like something from Fantastic Four, in which when the 4 main characters get blasted with the meteor, and then all of a sudden their powers get absorbed into their DNA, and then they get it. I kind of feel that vibe, and then he just has it, and then he can just zoom around. I would think that would kill him.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it probably would kill him. No doubt about that.
Anybody who's thinking about dumping their snails in nitrous oxide, please don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah, I believe there's some stupid idiot who's probably done that already. But yeah. Yeah. So, in regards to the story, then, I mean, it's pretty basic. I mean, is there anything else really to kind of like know? I mean, there's obviously the brother of the taco chef, and
So Angelo, his name is.
Angelo, okay.
Angelo and Chet are basically the same character. Theo and Tito, they even have the similar name. Theo, Tito. Come on.
Yeah.
Like, no, come on. Like they're essentially the same character. They have this determination, but they have different determinations.
I think they probably did
the,
that to kind of create some relatability between Angelo and Theo, but at the same time, it just kind of feels like you're just duplicating here. Like
yeah, you're duplicating the Linguini and Remy relationship.
But well, no, not the Linguini Remy relationship. You're just kind of duplicating characters. Like,
No. I'm talking about like the relationship in which how a human and an animal are, working together to kind of have like a similar goal. With Remy wanting to be a great chef and Linguini trying to fit in.
To be fair, I mean, Angelo and Theo were not the first, animal human relationship. Neither is Remy and Linguini.
No, they're not. But I do kind of feel like a similar vibe to it, and which. So you have.
I mean, if you want to go original, like in both the Disney and the DreamWorks lore, I think it's like Cinderella kind of like do it. Cinderella. Snow White even did it first. With all
Cinderella,
animal friends.
Old Yeller. I mean, they even like expanded it to aliens with E.T. and such. So yeah, it's been done before.
So it's like that I don't take too much complaint with. I just think it's a bit kind of weird having just a character who just kind of like brings down Angelo the same way that Chet kind of brings down Theo. Like
it's like we're watching two versions of the same story.
Yeah, exactly. And so I didn't think that was necessarily needed, really, to be quite honest with you. I think they should have just had it. Yeah, he should have been like doubtful about some of the things that were going on. No doubt about that. But I just think it just feels like you're kind of like telling the same story twice.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we're watching two movies that have the same plot at the same time.
Yeah, it's kind of like we're watching Tiger Hidden Dragon, where it's subtitled in like snail and like given to all the humans in like in another language, pretty much.
Yeah, it's like I don't know what should we call it, like Speeding Snail. Underdog Taco Shack or something.
I think we run this joke as far as it'll go.
We're done.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get to the other characters, because there are more characters that are in this struggling plaza. So you have a guy who works at a hobby shop. You have a woman who works at a garage, and you have another woman who works at a nail salon, and they are basically struggling to keep afloat in business. And they pretty much are like the same. They're in terms of like, I don't remember anything about them. I know that the old woman who runs the nail salon is kind of sassy, but then again, so is the female snail.
Yeah,
and then you have the guy in the hobby shop.
Kim Lee, I think her name was in that, and she was played by Ken Jeong, I think.
Yeah, Ken Jeong. Yes, most people would know Ken Jeong nowadays for being one of the judges in The Masked Singer, and he was in a TV show called Dr. Ken, and he was recently one of the beavers in Wonder Park, which I haven't heard any good things about that movie, to be quite honest, but I'm not saying anything here or now. Mm-hmm. Anyway, but so yeah, we have these characters, and I don't remember anything about them, especially the hobby shop guy. I mean, I think he's the one who owns the snails, because he's the one who like puts all the little neat things on them, and you see the snails running riding this kind of like Hot Wheels racetrack or something. And I don't know, but essentially
it's kind of weird. Like, are they? I mean, were they betting money on these snail races? I'd imagine they were.
That's kind of weird. It's like, yeah, it's like this underground group where they have like snail races, and I think they're betting money on it. But that, I don't like, does that even go anywhere in terms of like the main plot, other than just gathering these characters together and showing off, hey, look, Theo can race really fast now. And we're introduced to these characters that nobody remembers other than Samuel L. Jackson and Snoop Dogg voiced them.
Yeah, and it did feel kind of like a bit of, I mean, they did try to like balance out the snails. Obviously you had Turbo with his, pretty much his Sonic the Hedgehog abilities. But then you had, obviously the other guys who've got kind of like, I guess you could say street smarts, I guess you could say, because they know how to, do races and stuff. And,
sure. There was that one scene in which when Theo was like so overconfident that he could win, and then the snails challenge him to race up to the light that is above, the sign that is above the building, and then you have that montage in which like they skate around in the electric wires, and then they fly up, and you have this like smug face from the Samuel L. Jackson character, and then he just lands on it, and that'll kind of like play back in the final act. So there's that, and then all of a sudden they went from join us. No. Well, I'm gonna show you that you have a lot to learn. Okay, now we're buddies now.
Yeah, it's
And
just
that's
that whole thing. Something tells me that should have gone on a lot longer than it should have done. I don't know. For me, it kind of feels like, hey, here's this unnecessary friction, and then all of a sudden it just goes away within 3 minutes.
Yeah, true. So yeah, I guess let's talk about the brothers, the human brothers for a second. So yeah, basically Tito wants to help his brother make his taco shack a little bit more popular. And so Angelo, he has this passion for cooking and he wants his taco shack to be successful, and they only have a little bit of money left. And that is their life savings, and they're saving it for when they need to for desperate things. Like in that particular scene, their stove goes off and he needs the money so they can buy a new stove. So Tito has actually tried many times to get the taco shack to be well known. Like one instance, they brought in monkeys. Another instance that he was Taco Man and the brother was a churro sidekick. So apparently they've tried many times to bring their taco shack to more popularity, but it hasn't worked at all. And so there's one scene that I actually find a little bit confusing. So there's this one moment in which all of the human characters gather together and they give Tito the money so they can enter Theo into the Indy 500. And so while the stove goes off for Angelo while he's trying to cook, he tries to find the money and the money's gone. And then we have, while the Indy 500 is going, you have a whole bunch of people gathering around watching the TV.
There is one positive I will take out of that, and that is that at least in this situation, they didn't just leap in and say, "Oh, hey, we believe the snail," right on the first instance, and they just fork over the money and they all just go to Indianapolis. Like,
they didn't believe it at first. They're just like, you better be right on this. And they're risking everything just so that they can be able to drive all the way to Indianapolis to see if this bet is going to work.
Yeah, I'm just really glad that they just didn't immediately go into it, and they actually pulled it out, because that's actually what we probably would have been a realistic situation that what would have happened, maybe. And,
yeah, but I'm
saying this
curious.
in the context of a snail having going 200 miles an hour. Okay, so I am trying to apply context to this as best as I can. But I just think the way it just kind of goes. This is the thing. Like we're having to kind of explain more about the characters, because you wouldn't have got it on the first go. I think you kind of appreciate the fact that there's actually more characters in here than you would have thought there would have been. Like you got the woman who runs the nail salon, you got the woman who runs the auto place, and then you got the guy who I tell you what, I actually would have liked to have seen more concentration on the hobby shop guy. To be honest,
yeah, me too. Because the hobby shop guy, I think he's the one who, like I said before, he owns the snails and he has the little Hot Wheels racetrack, and he's the one who seems to be the more he seems to be the one who deserved the more development. But I
would argue that in the montage when they're fixing up Theo Turbo with the new shell. You see
that's true. That is true.
You see, it's the snails who picked out the frame, and then it was the hobby shop guy who basically put it together, and then it was the woman who ran the auto shop to kind of weld it all together and stuff like that, and then it was the other person who then did the other stuff, painting.
Yeah, but
but
that's still not enough. I really wanted to see more of these other characters. If you're gonna include this much characters, at least give them at least a handful of developments.
Mm-hmm. So, the characters are, in this are a bit throwaway, pretty much, and and on top of that, they kind of they're kind of par for the course, pretty much. You would expect, in something like this, when you look at a character like that, you expect it to be voiced by Snoop Dogg, or you expect it to be voiced by Samuel L. Jackson, pretty much, and then we finally get to the big race, and I will admit the race is exciting.
Yeah, it was actually not that bad.
Yeah, and so I mean, you go to the point where and I also like the Samuel Jackson, advice to Theo, where he basically turns around and says, "Look, do you think you're a car? Then stop being a car, race like a snail." And then it all suddenly comes together, and it's like, yeah, you kind of get represented like, yeah, he is racing like he's trying to race like a car, and he knows he's not a car, so stop being a car, be a snail.
Yeah, yeah, that was actually pretty cool, and only Samuel L. Jackson can pull it off with slapping him multiple times. Is like, you are not a car, race like a snail. I've had it with these mother flipping cars on this Monday through Friday race. I'm not even joking. I was actually talking about I was with a group of friends. We were doing a gig the other day for a concert at a big arena, and they were talking about Snakes on a Plane, and they were talking about like how it was like the worst but yet funniest movie they've ever seen. And one of the crew members, he was on camera with me. He was talking about like, yeah, I saw the censored version, and the Samuel L. Jackson character, he said, I've had it with these mother flippin' snakes on this Monday through Friday plane. That is actually what the censored version is. I have to check it out for myself.
Yeah, it's like I remember when he was in the interview. Basically, he just says, "Oh my goodness, there's so many snakes on this plane." But
yeah,
yeah. So
right.
I mean, as you can see here, I mean, it's Turbo overall is an average film. I think I would say that, but it does. You would lower. All I was gonna say is that when you first go into it, lower your expectations. Don't expect this to be like any big phenomenon or anything like that. This is gonna be your standard underdog story. And
I'm actually curious. How do you feel about this movie compared to Cars, like the series?
Given the fact that this wasn't made to make merchandise, I guess I have a little bit more respect, I think, for Turbo compared to Cars, maybe. I
mean, it didn't blow up into like this huge phenomenon where if you try to look up Turbo online for like the movie, you wouldn't like see a whole bunch of toys and such.
But here's the thing, like, I think it's been unfair to compare it to Cars because first of all, it wasn't as successful as Cars. I mean,
no. I mean, even though it did make a decent amount of money, it was considered to be a box office failure.
Yeah, I know. And on top of that, well, first of all, there wasn't. I think there was Was there a series? After
yes,
that?
There was a series called Turbo Fast that lasted for about 3 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, it did have some kind of, payoff after that. So there was something to keep people around. But, I mean, in regards to the franchise itself, I mean, it wasn't as popular as Cars. I don't think it was going to be as big as Cars, by no stretch of the imagination. So I don't think it's fair to compare it to Cars. I think it's, I mean, we spent more time comparing it to Ratatouille than we actually did comparing it to Cars. So, if anything, I think we can just say it's, it's not as successful as Ratatouille. And it doesn't capture the magic of Ratatouille either. So,
yeah, not even close.
No.
But yeah, overall, I mean, it's pretty average, and the characters are mostly stereotypical and throwaway, and the setting is pretty limited and bare bones, but it's not the worst thing we've seen on DreamMachine.
Mm-hmm. No, I tell you what, it was actually pleasantly surprising.
Yeah, sure.
I walked into this
like awful, but it was actually not that bad.
I walked in thinking it was not going to be as great, and I actually walked away thinking, this was worth my attention. Oh, at least for one.
I expected it to be awful. I expected it to be a train wreck because you know how I feel about Cars, and you know what? I was okay with it. Yeah. But yeah, I think that final words, if you are one of those people like myself who decided to stay away from this movie because you would think it was going to be as awful as the Cars series, then yeah, I would suggest check it out. Don't raise your expectations thinking, oh, it's going to be a better version of Cars, because it's not going to be like that. It's like we were talking before, we were comparing it constantly to Ratatouille, and even though it doesn't achieve anywhere close to like anything with Ratatouille, whether it be the characters or the setting or the story, but yeah, I would suggest check it out for yourself and draw your own conclusion. It's not awful. I would say that so far in this series of Dream Machines that we've done so far, I would say that Shark Tale, Over the Hedge, Shrek the Third, Shrek Forever After, and B Movie are actually worse.
Yeah. But I definitely say this. I think at the very end of this, there is going to be one thing I'm going to say in compare between DreamWorks and Pixar. But you're going to have to wait until the very end of the series. So, yeah, that's going to be... I'm keeping hold of this, people. I'm keeping hold of it. So, Patricia, what have we got coming up next?
All right, so coming up next, we are going to be talking about Mr. Peabody and Sherman.
Cool. Okay, until then, so for me, Aaron...
And Patricia.
Take care, and bye for now.
See you later.